Today, I'm joined by Steve Edwards. Steve is the managing director of the Foundation Stage Forum, and that's a community for early years professionals where all educators can come to discover, share, support, and learn together and continue to provide the best experience for children. So, welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, look, well, thank you for joining us. And I've described a little bit about the foundation stage forum there, Steve. But tell us a little bit more about the business and what you do.
Sure. So the Foundation Stage Forum is the name of the company now, and it started off, as you say, mainly being revolving around providing resources and support and community to early years professionals, by which I mean nursery practitioners, childminders, reception teachers, and increasingly, as time went on, going up through the primary stages of education as well. And that was quite a long time ago now. Now that I'm thinking back on it, it was 2003. We launched, and at that stage, the then Labour government was on the verge of introducing a whole raft of new legislation, curriculum frameworks, and so on and so forth. And my wife was actually running a nursery at the time, and she was forever telling me that she found it very difficult to find peer group support and whatever. So I kind of, I just basically decided I had an interest in online communities, and I thought this would be a really good example of something that people could come together. And over the following few years, we had tens of thousands of these practitioners joining us and engaging in discussion. So that's how it started. There was a big change in 2012 when we launched a product called Tapestry, which very quickly became the cuckoo in the nest and caused the company to need to start growing fast and for us to become much more professional, I guess, about the way we looked after the product.
And so how was you mentioned there about Tapestry? Tell us a little bit about the Tapestry and how you've incorporated that into the Foundation Stage Forum.
Sure. So Tapestry is it's an app, a program that enables practitioners to keep parents in touch with the children that are in their care. It's available via browser, via Android app, via iOS app. And that's actually, the idea for that came from the Foundation Stage Forum's community and support discussions. People were always, back in the noughties, it grew increasingly popular to have kind of scrapbooks put together. They became journals where people would put photographs in. The practitioners would talk about or write notes about what the children had been doing during the day. And at some stage, probably about 2010, I kind of thought, well, the technology, the tablets are arriving, the mobiles are arriving. It ought to be possible to help practitioners by doing some of this stuff so that they wouldn't have to take the photos on digital cameras, stick them into books and so on and so forth. So that's where the idea actually originated. It was a natural progression from the resources that we had been offering previously, but it took off in a way that, I mean, I thought it would be popular, but it grew very, very quickly through 2013, 2014, all the way up until the pandemic. And the pandemic was a real, that was a year not to be forgotten for us, where we were basically almost being a support, an emergency service for the practitioners and the parents. So yeah, that's how it evolved.
Great stuff. And look, from what you've said there, is you're obviously a sort of very sort of forward-looking person there, Steve, because 20, I think you said 2003, so what, 22 years ago, you set it up and it was about sort of community then. Well, actually, we now look at, online communities and those sort of things now as a bit more normalized, but back then that wasn't the case. And
No.
And then also the Tapestry that you mentioned, again, that was quite a few years ago that you started thinking, well, okay, Androids, iPhones and iPads, etc. How can you bring that into your business? So is that something that you've always done, sort of been able to sort of look forward and think, well, okay, what are future needs of the might be helpful to people, and how can I solve those problems?
Uh, I think I probably am, and I certainly that is probably my main job now. Now that I have other people to do all the real work for me, I can take a step back, and that is very much how I view things at the moment. I'm looking out at the horizon all the time, trying to think how we can make Tapestry better, what other things what we might need to take into consideration. We have huge amounts of competitors now. Of course, we launched pretty much the original service, and at that time, we were able to make hay while the sun shone. We now have well over a dozen competitors, some of which are insanely well funded through venture capital, private equity, or whatever. And although we're still sitting there, probably the best known and the most used service, we're having to look to our laurels really. And so yes, I'm constantly looking out and trying to think, what should we be doing next? How are we going to keep on top of the pile, etc.
And I think that's a key. That's an important thing for uh, a business to do, isn't it? To be constantly looking forward and saying, how's the world changing? How's the environment changing? And how can we build that into our business and keep delivering solutions? Because otherwise, yeah, you can get left behind. And actually,
Absolutely.
what you mentioned there, Steve, is a key role for somebody within the business. Okay. And I think it was in the E-Myth book that they mentioned by Michael Gerber, who mentions 3 roles in a business: the entrepreneur, that the role that you've just described, looking forward, coming up with the ideas; the managers, who actually start to shape those ideas and think how we're going to implement them; and then the technicians, the ones that actually implement them and put them into place. So yeah, what you've just described there neatly describes one of the key roles that helps a business to scale and grow.
Absolutely. It's a great thing really to, as the size of your organization changes, as you start growing, and I was the product support, for example, manager, and the only product support engineer. When Tapestry first launched, we now have a whole product support team. Although I didn't actually do the coding for Tapestry itself, I did the coding for the original website and resources for the Foundation Stage Forum. By the time we got round to launching Tapestry, I had found people much better than me at doing the development work. So, and I think that's one of the other things that I've always found, is that make yourself redundant from as many of the jobs that you're doing as you can. Step back, give it to people who are better than you, and then you'll find a new role. And for me, that's where it ended up. I look out. I sometimes get in the way and make a pain of myself, but ultimately, I'm really just trying to make sure that in the medium and long term, Tapestry is still going to be relevant into the future.
Yeah, and I think that, like, what you've highlighted there is another sort of key point, is actually focus on what you're good at and enjoy. So the 2 things: what
Yes.
you're good at and what you enjoy. Because generally the things that you enjoy, you're good at, and vice
Yeah.
versa. And surround yourself by other people that can do the other things better and enjoy doing those things. Now, as you say, when you set up a business, that isn't always possible because you end up doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
But have that vision of, okay, right, this is what I want to end up doing, because this is what I enjoy and I'm good at. How do I move towards that and create everything else that works around that? So a great share. I like that. Thank you very much for sharing that, Stephen. And Steve, look, just one of the things I always like to ask people on this is being a business owner something that you'd always planned to do? How did you, or did it just happen by chance?
Oh, it was very much by chance. Yes, I had previously I'd worked for Ericsson up until 2001, the telecoms company, and I was a technical manager there. What happened was I was getting more and more fed up. We had a young family at the time, and I was getting more and more fed up with getting into the car, driving around the M25 to Guildford every day, not seeing them when they got up, and maybe only seeing them for an hour or so when I got back from work. And so I don't know if you remember that there were license spectrum auctions back in 2003 for the first of the sort of the 3G revolution that came along. After that, a lot of manufacturers, Ericsson included, found it very, very difficult because a lot of the networks had spent so much money on the spectrums that they were actually cutting back a lot on the equipment that they bought. So Ericsson offered a voluntary severance program, and after thinking quite carefully about it, because we did still have a young family, Helen and I decided that yes, that this was going to be a good thing to do. And then the following 18 months, I would spend trying frantically to avoid having to go back into that corporate world again afterwards. And so the idea that we came up with was this forum, which we launched. But even at that stage, it wasn't necessarily with the intent of becoming a business. What we hoped was that we could prove it was useful enough that the Department for Education or local authorities or whatever would be happy to fund it, and we could run it as a not-for-profit organisation. So we ran out of all of those possibilities within the following year, and I had to make a decision because it had become extremely popular very quickly. I had to make a decision either to close it down or to relaunch it. So that's what we did. We relaunched it as a personal subscription service. So for £20 a year, the 10, 20, 30,000 practitioners that were using it would have full access to the form. And so we became a business out of necessity back then. And slowly local authorities started buying into it. And so it grew very successfully then. We were able to take on a developer and our first employee who managed the sort of customer contacts, who's still with us, by the way. So that was 2005. I think we took Sue on, and Sue's still with us now. So we grew quickly enough that we could start thinking. And again, this is where the process of trying to withdraw and put these better people in place so that you can actually start thinking about other things into the future. We then launched a separate forum. We launched a downloadable program and various other bits and pieces. And by the end of the noughties, it was becoming fairly clear that the social media and the sort of Facebooks and newly launched Twitter at the time, I think, were really sort of the immediacy of those offerings were starting to cause the popularity of our message board and support system to wane a little bit. And so that's when I started thinking about Tapestry and thinking, we've got to future-proof ourselves. So because I had the luxury of moving back from it, I was able then to come up with this new idea, which we launched, as I say, in October 2012.
Like it. So giving you that capacity to start to think about how we're going to take this forward. What's the next step? How can we evolve? And
Exactly.
and actually, what we should highlight is, you've now created a very successful business, and it has grown, as you've said. I mean, how many people roughly do you employ at the moment now, Steve?
It's 38. I think I counted them this morning. Yes,
Okay, so,
including Helen and me. So yeah.
So that gives us an idea of the scale and size of your business now. But as you've alluded to there, Steve, it's not always a straight journey. So what's the biggest challenge that you've faced being a business owner?
I suppose in terms of physically, we were operating out of our house until 2019. Between 2012, when Tapestry was launched, we went from having 4 employees to having 16 in 2019, all of whom were very cosily sitting in our house doing the job. We really needed to relocate ourselves, and so we actually spent some time, and in 2017 bought and then renovated a big building in the centre of town, and moved everybody in on April the 1st, 2019. And we didn't quite make the first anniversary before we all got kicked back out in March 2020 with the advent of the pandemic. But at that stage, we'd grown to 25 people. And as I say, from that was 2019, and now in 2025 we have double that number, 38. So it's it was an experience, and it was kind of holding on to a tiger by the tail, really, trying to keep all of the people working, the developing requirements for a growing number of customers, all actually happy, and the service running reliably, and also to have to work out where we're going to move so that we could continue to do so. That's probably the biggest challenge. But on the other side of it, we're now very, very happy with where we are.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing, sort of scaling a business and growing a business brings its challenges because, as you say, you've then, you know, you generally employ more people. That brings on sort of challenges in terms of, right, how do we manage and lead that many more people? You've mentioned about premises there, and how do we all work together as a team? When you're a small team of, I think you mentioned, you were 4 back in 2012. It's easier to work together, isn't it? It's easier to communicate. But actually, when you've got now at 38, actually to keep that structure, that framework, and keep the culture that you want in the business becomes more and more challenging. So, you know, if you could wave a magic wand now and solve any one challenge in your business, what would it be?
Okay, so the big challenge that we have at the moment is with a number of very ferocious competitors is to try and make sure that we're developing technically as fast as we possibly can.
Mm.
We need to fill in any gaps that we see arriving. We need to develop some things that we think are innovative and will keep us, ahead of the pack. And all of those things has to happen because of the way that we've chosen to do our business now. Competitors and many businesses will take on huge amounts of debt. They will, or they will take investors. Some of our competitors are being funded to the tune of $30 million, $60 million in one case. We've chosen to actually work in profit, so we don't take out huge loans. We can only grow as fast, therefore, as we can pay our 10 extremely talented developers. And so that's the challenge, I would say, is we're trying ever more efficiently, hopefully, to slot in new projects, to continuously prioritize and try and make sure that we've got the most important ones coming in that are going to have the biggest impact, but also that smaller things that customers will see and feel very grateful for because it's making their job easier, that those things can also be slotted in the in between the really big projects. We're just about coming to fruition with one that we're going to start launching in June, which completely transforms the appearance of Tapestry. It's a complete UX overhaul, navigational change, and it's a big job to do something like that. If you think the internet looked very different in 2012, we've had so much to do that we haven't really changed the appearance and the technology and the architecture of Tapestry until now. And so we're starting to look a little bit dated, and we've recognised that. So for the last 18 months, we've been working on this huge thing that is just coming to fruition now. And that's something that customers don't see. This is a bit like rewiring your house. Afterwards, that you've got nice, new circuit breakers and things like that, but nobody else cares about that. So the bigger projects that are necessary to keep you up and current have to be done, even though you know that they're going to swallow up your time. If we had taken investment, we could probably have put separate teams in place to accomplish all of that stuff. But that's just not the way we chose to go.
But yeah, it didn't suit your way you wanted to grow and etc. And I get that. So yeah, look, competition is can be a challenge, and as you say, particularly with private equity. But the key thing there is, and as you've highlighted, and I just wanted to sort of, one thing that I really picked up from what you sort of said there was actually, and stood out to me, was making sure that you're focused on what your customers, clients, however you refer to them, what is it they need and what. And by staying close to them and understanding what that is actually really helps. Whereas some of the bigger ones can lose sight of that. They're too focused on what they want rather than what the end user wants. So I think the key thing I picked up from what you said, the way you're doing it, is okay, what do our clients, what do our customers
Absolutely. Yeah, we have really nice mechanism in place now for prioritization, and we have kind of a strategy and a prioritization group, and we're working for the top sort of 5 or 6 priorities. We're working and continuously rearranging it when we feel that something else is just becoming too important. So we're looking at it all the time, and keeping the customers close is absolutely key to that. We have actually. This is one thing. Um, Given that our customers exclusively people who are involved in early years education, working with young children, we have a brilliant set of customers. They're generally really nice people who really enjoy the jobs that they might do. They might get frustrated because they're not being paid enough, or so on and so forth. But on the whole, they really want to talk to us about what they do because they're really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, and generally that is a case with people that are in that sort of profession, is they are really passionate about what they do, and they're doing it for a purpose. Because as you say, it's not very well paid. So there is a reason that they're doing it. And actually the other key thing, again, just to highlight there that you mentioned is about prioritizing. You know, selecting a small number of priorities to focus on, not a whole load of small things. Right, they're our biggest priorities. But the second thing you mentioned there is constantly reviewing them. Are they constantly the right ones? Do we need to move them around? So yeah, focus on the few big things that are going to make the biggest difference to your business, and constantly review whether they continue to be the key things. So
yeah, if I could just give you an example of that. When the pandemic struck, our chief engineer came in having already, and this is where I think we're really lucky with our team, is that I didn't say I need you to go and do this. He came in and he said he'd been through a list of the requirements that we always keep as a wish list, and he said, now that the children are all going home, parents are having to be in charge, this, that, and the other. There's this top 6 list of activities that I think we can get in place within the next six weeks or so that people can start using it. And in fact, we had 4 activities launched before the end of the following week. For example, things like trebling the length of the videos that you can take, so that the practitioners can actually give the videos to the parents, who will then actually talk the children through it, and so on and so forth. Launching a series of activities for parents to do directly with their children. All of those things. So we turn around on the sixpence on that occasion. So yeah, I was very proud of that.
Right, and the reason that you're able to do that is because of the way that you work, the systems, the processes that you've got in place to continually review what's important right now. How can we do this? So yeah, love that. That's great. And look, Stephen, there's one question that I always like to ask everybody that's kind enough to join me on this discussion, and that's this: what is the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you? If you could go back and speak to yourself when you're 18, what would you say?
I think take your time. You've got 50 years of work probably ahead of you, unless you make it, really rich in the first 10 years. I think experiment and go and try different things. And just, I actually started out doing a job that I thought would take up the rest of my career. And I started doing that at 17 years old. And by the age of 20, I realized I absolutely hated it. So meanwhile, I had not done a lot of things that I think a lot of my friends had done, because I was a policeman. I became a police cadet and a policeman. So basically I was living on a police campus and so on and so forth. So all of my friends that went off to university and had a whale of a time, I didn't have any of that stuff. I think just taking your time, stepping back, thinking, unless you've got some absolute driven commitment, there's so many things in the world that you don't know at 18, and give yourself time.
Yeah, good. Take time and experiment. I think that's great advice, because it is difficult to work out, isn't it? What you want to do, and at that age, and try different things, see what works for you.
Absolutely.
Well, look, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today, and sharing more about your business and also your journey as well. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, Simon.